There's formation that is happening in those first 5 years of life that is crucial to how they are going to be successful as students as they mature and get older. And then we saw over the years that our students became the leaders in their classes. They understood our culture, they understood our expectations, they understood academics that we were presenting to them. Our pre-K program is brand new this year. It's very exciting to have very little ones on campus, and they're so excited to be learning and in a place where they are able to thrive.
As Christians, we know we're called to live lives that are different from the world around us. This isn't aimless, but purposeful. And as parents, we know this to be true for our children and our approach to education as well. So how do we do this? How can we be thoughtfully and intentionally different in education, parenting, community, and culture? Welcome to Different by Design. Thank you for joining us today on Different by Design. I'm your host, Matt Dixon, and along with Trinity's founder and head of school, Liz Caddow, we're going to be talking about early education at Trinity, which is the littlest of the littles. So this is Trinity's pre-K and TK programs. And I'm excited because today we're joined by Trinity's Director of Admissions, Elizabeth Hosmann, and Sarah Robertson. We get to work together, and she oversees our grammar school curriculum and teacher training. So really looking forward to this conversation with both of you because I know that you have an intimate working knowledge, an understanding of not just these programs, but really the process and what parents are going through as they're thinking through and considering these things. Because I can even speak for myself as a dad. I remember when my kids first started and they first start school, it's overwhelming and it feels daunting to go, is this the right place? And how do I know they're ready? And all of those kinds of things. So thank you both for joining us today, and we're looking forward to the conversation.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited.
All right. So I think before we dive into some of those topics, we'd just love for both of you to be able to share your background, share a little bit about your time here at Trinity, what you've done in the past, what you're currently doing. I think all of that would be really helpful.
Well, I'm Sarah Robertson, and I have been a part of Trinity first as a parent for a long time. I started about 19 years ago with kindergartners. I walked through these doors as a mom first, and then shortly after, by the time my youngest was a second grader, I came on as a full-time faculty member and did that for about a decade. And then in the past, I'm now in my third year of being our coordinator for curriculum and teacher training in our grammar school. So it's been a journey, but a wonderful one.
That's great. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so my name is Elizabeth Hosmann, and I came to know Trinity even before it started. I remember when Liz stood up and asked us to pray for her because she was starting a school in church, which was amazing to me, and watched it grow. And then when my daughter was in kindergarten, we transferred mid-year, and that little girl is now 27. Both of my kids came all the way through Trinity, K through 12th grade, and this is my 21st year.
That's great. Well, thank you both. And I think one of the best places for us to start when we're talking about this early education is really answering maybe a little bit of the why. I know for some schools, no matter what context, we see only starting at kindergarten. And for us, we have obviously specifically made a choice to invest in these earlier years, even beyond with pre-K and TK. And so from your perspective, why even invest in these early years for our students, for families, rather than just say maybe focusing on kindergarten and beyond? What would you say to that?
Well, there's absolutely a lot of benefit to having our students come to us at an early age. There's formation that is happening in those first 5 years of life that is crucial, absolutely crucial to how they are going to be successful as students as they mature and get older. And we realized in our kindergarten program that we were able to do a certain amount of formation, but if we were able to capture them, get them interested in education just a little bit younger, we would be able to extend that time of formation. So we began looking first at developing a TK program, which has now been in existence for 10 years. And our TK program began as a thought of scaffolding into what they would encounter when they get into kindergarten, but beginning just a year earlier. Let's start with forming their virtues. Let's start with forming their character at the age of 4 to 4.5, and then also give them the foundational tools that they need to approach our academics that they will encounter once they're in kindergarten with a sense of understanding. They will walk into kindergarten more prepared. And then we saw over the years that our students that came from TK into our kindergarten program became the leaders in their classes. They understood our culture, they understood our expectations, they understood academics that we were presenting to them in a way that students that had come from other preschools or other places did not have. And so we just saw the blessing of that, and our kindergarten teachers expressed over and over again that the TK students were coming with an advantage that they were so appreciative of. They came ready to do school in a way that was just a blessing. So we saw that, and then we've scaled back further. We realized as the laws have changed that we were able to accept students starting at 4 years old, and so we've decided to go back a level. Let's include a pre-K and get them even sooner, build this formation and character into them even younger, get them prepared for what we're going to be doing in our grammar school at an even younger age. So it became an opportunity to add a year, and our pre-K program is brand new this year. It's just begun. It's very exciting to have very little ones on campus, and they are between 4 and 4.5, so they are very little.
They're little,
and they're
very sweet.
Very cute.
Very,
and they're so excited to be learning and in a place where they are able to thrive. And
They definitely win the cutest students award when they're walking through the hallway.
absolutely.
By far.
Yeah, I'm amazed we have uniforms that tiny.
They're so excited.
And I would add, just historically, those of us who experienced kindergarten as a place to play, and we might have started when we were 4 years old, things have really changed a lot, especially over the last 15 years. And what we are learning over and over again is that when students start kindergarten on a little bit older level, so when they're 5 or even 6 years old, we see that advantage developmentally follows them throughout their academic career. So when we're starting to, math becomes more abstract, like in 3rd grade, the older students seem to do better. They're more mature and ready to tackle college. So we just see it as an lasting advantage. And so parents rightfully don't want to wait until they're 6 to start their educational journey. And pre-K and TK gets them ready for that. So that's another advantage.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of research and advocates for that, one of them being Dr. Sachs, who's coming to speak to our community, both our faculty and then parent community in October. But he has as an MD, PhD, has a lot of, even as I've been reading and been more informed by his research, just he's a big proponent of that, to say, don't rush it, and not just from a relational side, but maturation and everything else as well. And so it's been really helpful. And so as a result, I love that we have those other options for parents to say, hey, maybe your child's not quite kindergarten ready, so why not consider, some of these, as they're still going to learn academically, and as you said, in their character formation and everything else as well. So I think for our listeners and for families, and I even know internally sometimes here, when we've added this pre-K level, there's a lot of use of the word, or the letter K, like pre-K, TK, K. Like, can you guys give kind of a quick overview as far as what are the differences, maybe just practically from, if I'm a parent coming in, like, age, academic, like what the process, how do I know which one? All of that, I think, is sometimes can be a little bit confusing, but maybe just clarify that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it is a little bit confusing. So our pre-K age requirements are age 4 to 4.5 beginning September 1st. So as your child is beginning school, they need to be at least 4 years old, up to 4.5, and that qualifies them for our pre-K class. Our age for TK is 4.5 to 5.5. And sometimes we've even had students a little bit older than that just still needed a TK year before beginning kindergarten. So that age is a little bit older and experiences a little more maturity. Part of the reason we differentiated those two classes is because it becomes this very large age range. To have 4-year-olds all the way through almost 6-year-olds in one program for TK was this developmental range that was very challenging for teachers to teach. You had some that were very, very ready for kindergarten, and others that were just maturity-wise were much younger developmentally. And so adding that other level gives us a chance to make sure that we're able to serve both of those age groups. The other thing to remember is that we might have students that are going to matriculate into kindergarten out of both programs, because in the state of California, to begin kindergarten, you need to be 5 by September 1st. So a 4-year-old beginning in our pre-K program will be 5 by September 1st the following year. And so both our pre-K and our TK programs are heavily curricularly focused on kindergarten readiness. We want our children to be ready to enter kindergarten at the end of those years in either program. So that is the goal of both programs. Now, because our pre-K program has the younger ones, we are preparing them for what they need for kindergarten, but we're doing it through more play, more of a gentle approach to academics, but they are still getting all of the readiness skills that they would need. They will still have all of the pre-reading requirements that will help them to become great readers in kindergarten, and math skills that are fundamental to becoming good math students and being able to do the conceptual math that they'll encounter once they go into kindergarten through either program. And then the other big thing that is important to note is that we use a screening process with all of our pre-K and TK students. So at the end of the year, we use a Brigance screener, which helps us make that determination of where they should be going next. The Brigance screener screens in 4 domains. It's looking at the child, their physical development, their language development, their academic skills, and cognitive development. And then it also looks at some self-help and emotional skill domain areas. So we're really looking at the whole child. The screener allows us to determine whether they would benefit from one more year of TK or whether they're now ready for kindergarten and we can matriculate them into kindergarten. That screener is a great tool for us.
I do think one of the things I'm super excited about now that we have the pre-K and could do that this year is it just allows also parents to give their child time, similar to what you were talking about, Dr. D, with Dr. Sachs. Just give our children time to grow and learn in a way that is gentle for them. And those that are ready, great. They can do it. But it helps parents relax a little bit in that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and I really like this screening because it's a nationally normed screening. It's not a Trinity screening. It's not a state of California. It's not our local district. So it is given to thousands of kids across the country every single year. So we have some really good data-driven, evidence-based screening to help us make that determination. And we don't do it in a vacuum. We don't do it just based on the numbers of the screening. We're talking to parents, we're talking to teachers, and we're doing it in a partnership with all of them to do what's best for the student.
Elizabeth, can you speak to, maybe from an admissions perspective, I know we talked about the screening, but just overall the process of how we help families determine where is the right entry point for them and for their child?
Yeah, for sure. So we start with age. That's the number one thing. And so that starts to help guide the process. Typically, I kind of lead people through the whole process and explain the difference between pre-K and TK, because there are some that are kind of right on the cusp that could go either way. So we want to make that decision with parents. I explain that we do actually do the Brigance that Sarah was just explaining as our initial entry point, our initial evaluation. So we do that. And if we're ever in doubt, then I usually recommend that they start in the younger grade. And then we can, after the first couple weeks of school, we can move them around if we need to. But always with the idea that it's easier to move up into a different class than it is to tell a TKer like, hey, we really need to put you in pre-K. Really protecting the child's experience of school and their soul and everything like that. But it's not a formula. It's definitely, we use the Brigance, we observe the child, we talk to the parents and find out what they want, and then we guide them from there.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, I think it's every year there's usually a student that might find, they can pop up. And there's also a student that might find that, it's probably better just actually go back and start here, and that's okay.
It's definitely okay. And I think that from the very beginning, I'm going to use this word over and over again, it's a partnership. So what we want to do is with the parents, tell them who we are and that they get to know us, so that there's a whole lot of trust that's involved. We trust the parents to know their child and to partner with us. They trust us to guide them in the way that it should go. And sometimes it's not one conversation. Sometimes it's multiple conversations because we're framing the academic journey for, maybe 13 or 14 years. And we have the experience of knowing what's at the end, what it's the difference between graduating a 17-year-old senior and graduating an 18-year-old senior. So we're able to share our experience, our observations, the data from the Brigance, and in partnership with parents who are the experts on their children.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that even as much from where I sit, wouldn't it be so nice, even as parents or as educators, if it was just a formula? It would be so much easier if our child, we could just say, A plus B equals, C, and great. And that means guaranteed success. And that means guaranteed entry into this college, or guaranteed, character qualities, or whatever that might be. That would be a lot easier. And yet, for some reason, the Lord in his wisdom said, no, that's not how it is. And so I think even the approach that we have, where we're trying to take some of the equation pieces, testing and academic screenings and all of that, that is definitely a factor, a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle when we're looking at, because this is a child created in God's image. And they are more complicated and more multifaceted than one singular test can provide, no matter if that's an entry exam or ongoing screenings or anything like that. And so they're useful. They're very helpful. And I know they have helped us make good informed decisions. But I think that's always that piece that's important for us, both as educators and again as parents, to rest in and knowing, okay, it's going to be okay, and we have to work together. And like you said, partner together to say, how do we continue to help this child in the variety of ways of how God has created them to be, and what does that look like?
Totally. And I think, one of the biggest lies that's out there, and this is not just education and parenting, it's everything, that there is one size fits all. There's a formula. If you would just do it right, if you would just follow our plan,
then it's guaranteed.
Then it's guaranteed, a guarantee of outcome. And we know, especially as believers, that there's no guarantee of anything except of our salvation through Christ, and really resting in that. And so not only is the student growing and being shaped their character and formation, but it's also as parents, as we begin to have to partner with other entities and organizations, we are also being sanctified as parents. And all of us who've been on this journey for a while knows that that's the most humbling job in the world, to trust, to let go, to sometimes have some, uncertainty, and to be doing that with people who are equally committed, not only to the education, but the soul of your student, who are going to love your student, as close as they can to what you're doing. That was the incredible experience that I had as a mom going through this. Even more than the education was the commitment to my daughter's souls and who they became as people. It's just a tremendous blessing to have that kind of trust and community and partnership with parents.
Elizabeth, you mentioned a few times now about partnership, and we do truly see this as a partnership with our families and the children we serve for the entire time, all of it being quite a process. How do you feel that, or how would you say Trinity comes alongside families in this whole process of them coming into Trinity, how we navigate with them, and how we do that practically through admissions, but also relationally, and encouraging and helping resource our families in this partnership?
Yeah, I think the thing that we really strive for, that I strive for, is to be transparent from the very beginning. I don't think that it's my job to sell the school to the families. I think it's my job to present who we are truly and explain it to the best of my ability, and give them all the information they need to make an informed decision of whether or not that we're their people. And that's really my job. And I always say I have the easiest job in the world, because all I have to do is walk parents around. And they know. They meet you, Liz. They hear your heart. They meet, Matt. They meet Sarah. They see our kids. They meet other parents. And then they make that decision. And I will say this other thing with partnership, and also that they're a mission fit, that they're on board for the whole thing. And because it's not just their student, they're going to be experiencing other students and other parents and other teachers and people, who have their own opinion. But I always say, if you know, you know. And that has been, that sounds very unscientific, but that's what it really comes down to in my experience of 21 years, is that parents say from the very beginning, I just knew that this was a community that I wanted to be part of and somewhat be vulnerable and take risks with as well.
How do you help our families, especially in the initial process, navigate some of their financial concerns? And because they could go down the street and it doesn't cost them anything. I mean, how do you help them navigate some of that in our partnership?
We definitely are not free. And I think that money is one of the primary concerns that people have, and rightfully so. A good education is not cheap. We are a nonprofit 501c3 independent school. And what that means is we don't take money from the government, number one. Also, as opposed to some schools that might be run through a ministry or a church or diocese or a greater denomination who supports that educational entity, we were started all on our own. Through Liz, you and Wally, sacrificing literally everything, selling your home to start the school, going on support and risking it all. And the Lord has blessed us so amazingly throughout the years, but it's also, we have to kind of stand on our own. So we have always been committed to a need-based tuition assistance program with the idea, the greater scope of representing the whole body of Christ. So that's why we have over 85 churches represented in our student body. That's why we have various socioeconomic levels of families. That's why we have different learning levels, which Sarah is probably going to talk about a little bit more. So in that, with our need-based tuition assistance program, we do use a third party to help keep things consistent. And then we ask a series of about 15 custom questions. And again, we want to look at the whole family. So someone might qualify for need-based tuition assistance, but there are some underlying things that they might need to look at as a family in terms of their spending trajectories and things like that, while other families may not qualify on paper for tuition assistance, but in talking to them more and hearing more about what their financial goals and burdens are, we can assist them. So we have them fill out the application, and then families, if they're initially applying, they come and meet with me in person. One of the biggest things that serves to is it takes the mystery and the sting and the secretiveness of finances and puts it out as in something we can talk about and normalize. And that's really important, especially as the years go on. If something happens with a family and they fall on financial hard times, or they just had unexpected expenses, they don't know who to go to with that, because a lot of times they're embarrassed, or they just feel like, no, I said I was going to do it. And then what happens is that causes this underlying pressure. So we help frame that for them. I help them with their initial tuition assistance, and I'm available at any time, even mid-year, to come and talk to work things out. I always tell people, please don't wait until you're all the way down the road of solving this problem on your own. Please come and talk to us first, because the interruption to a child's education is so devastating. Yes. It's so hard to change schools. And our commitment is that when you come to Trinity, I want to sit next to you at their graduation and celebrate. And you do. And Sarah and Matt and Liz, I know that you guys all feel the same exact way. We're committed for the long haul, and that's through the good times and the bad times. So our need-based tuition assistance program, one thing that people do need to know is, because it is funded by us, it is a limited pool of money. And so we do our best to help as many people as we can. Sometimes we can help with the gap between what a family feels they can afford and the full cost of the education. But sometimes we have to just partially fill that. But we just continue to work with families. I would say this, to prepare yourself to see about affording private education in general, is first and foremost, be really realistic about what you spend. So again, take the mystery and the embarrassment and the secretiveness and all that, and put it all out there so you know exactly where your money's going. So that helps, number one, to know that. And don't eat the whole elephant. And this goes specifically to my dads out there who are listening. Don't eat the whole elephant, because dads will just go, okay, it's this much money times 13 years, and then we have, college,
Oh,
and then we have
at one
retirement.
time,
Yeah. And our dads, I love that about our dads' hearts, is that's the burden that I'm just saying that in general. There's always one person, it's usually the dad, who thinks in the long term and wants to say yes to the now, but also knows I need to provide for the future. And that can be really overwhelming, where we always have one person, typically the mom, who's looking at the right now. This is what we need right now. So, being on board with one another. And again, all of this is spiritual. All of this is with prayer, but also the Lord expects us to kind of be in reality about that. And then that can go really well. I do a lot of long-term planning with families, so I can help them anticipate what's going to happen 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And but we'll help you through it. I always say this, there's not a question that I haven't heard, but then someone comes up with a question I haven't heard. But, try me and we'll see what we can do.
I was also wondering, Sarah, maybe you can speak to this. What makes Trinity's pre-K and TK unique or different compared to local options?
I think the biggest difference is it's a classical experience, which means in a lot of ways that we are taking the pedagogical principles of classical education and we are working them into how we approach this lower level of early childhood education. That means there's going to be lots and lots of singing and memorization through different ways that children easily memorize and repetition. There's going to be lots of ways that we are integrating experience across curriculum, our integration of our subject. So they have a story every week that is focused on a certain letter that they're learning that week. And then that story then indicates what they're doing with the rest of their subjects. So this week in pre-K, they're reading a book about igloos because they're introducing the letter I and all of the sounds that the letter I makes, I and I and E and Y. And then they are also taking that concept of igloos and expanding it. So in science, they're learning about how water freezes and turns into snow. They're integrating it into their understanding of geography by finding the places in the world where they might see an igloo. It isn't going to be in our backyard here in Southern California, but they learn about the map and where on our planet they would find an igloo. Then they might also integrate that into Bible and thinking about cultural understandings of the people groups that are building igloos and how, as Christians, we want to have a desire to reach these people groups. These are people that need to know Jesus and what we might do to share the love of Christ there, and the families that might live in an igloo and what that looks like today, even in our modern world. And then they are also doing some STEM activities because they're also going to build an igloo with marshmallows, which is fun. A feat for 4-year-olds to do, and it takes a lot of effort to make that structure stand, and a lot of glue also, but it's a lot of fun. And so they're actually turning their experience into a physical thing, and as they create their igloo, they're using the vocabulary that they're pulling from the story that they're reading this week, and they're practicing that vocabulary in person. They're also taking other concepts that they've learned and they're discussing them and building comprehension of their understanding of these new concepts, like the Inuit people, that would be the people group that live in igloos. So it becomes this integrated experience across curricular subjects that allows them to really be immersed in this world. That week it's igloos. The next week it's going to be something new because their literature book will change and the letter focus of the week will change. And so that integrated education is just one of the most beautiful parts of classical education, and it's something that continues throughout all of our grades in grammar school, kindergarten, first grade, and all the way up. They're always integrating around either literature or around their history, but it's the most enjoyable way to learn as a child, and they experience so much fun and joy. It's really a delight to be in those classrooms because the experience of wonder as children are putting pieces together themselves and taking concepts and connecting them to other concepts, and the light bulbs that are going off as they experience that is really just a delight to see. And it's just, there's so much giggling when you're in there. It's
so fun.
You can't help but smile.
You can't.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the misconceptions about classical education that I had. It just sounds like, pretty serious. And it is. I mean, it is. But that's why I love having parents come on campus to see the joy and to see the love of learning that we're instilling in their hearts. And as a parent, that's another thing that I experienced was because I was not raised in a classical educational environment, and my growth and my love of learning and my desire to continue to know more and my desire to think critically on subjects and investigate and build my skills and to be a lifelong learner, it's infectious. And I love that about classical education.
Well, and as a parent now on the other side of it, it really was a marvel on some level to see what our kids were doing and thinking about. And I would find myself often just wishing I had had it.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the beautiful parts, too, is as we're integrating content in our subjects, we're also integrating the Word of God into all of that. So I could go back and talk about the ways that teachers are working in what God is doing in the world and in His creation as they're teaching all of these subjects across the board. The creation of water, that is something that God formed for us, and then it has this magical ability to freeze and then evaporate and turn into a liquid. It's sort of this incredible thing, but we point always to the Creator who gave us that capacity to do that, and give God glory for that, and that applies in every subject as they're learning in all of these ways.
When you think back, now that we've had, especially TK, I know we've launched pre-K now, but for as you said, over a decade, what are, I don't know, maybe some success stories or maybe individual students that just come to mind that went through that and you saw the fruit, you saw the benefit, and especially Sarah, I know where you sit for many years as a kindergarten teacher. You alluded to this and you talked about this earlier where you saw these students who were coming in. So is there a particular student or two or a story maybe that stands out just as far as, yes, this worked, like, you know, and not that, again, going back to, not that anything's a guarantee in that sense, but also knowing that we look at these things and we look at these stories and we look at these students to know, yeah, that's what we want to continue to do. That's what we want to build off of when we're trying to form our students and help them grow.
Yeah, I feel like I have so many names that pop into my head when you say that. I can think of stories of several children that have just benefited from this program over the years, but the first one that just pops to the top of my head is a current ninth grader who began in our early childhood program as a kindergartner. He came in as a kindergartner. He was a very young kindergartner. I think he was just 5 in a month or something like that at the beginning of school. And very quickly in the kindergarten program, we could tell that he was going to struggle. We'd do some initial testing with students, and when the testing revealed that he was going to struggle, that we looked at how he was performing, and we could just see that this was going to be difficult. And so we, at that point, had a conversation with his parents about the option of transferring him into TK and doing TK instead of kindergarten. And it was a hard decision for them to make. It's difficult to think through that process. And in the end, after a lot of prayer and consideration, they decided to put him into TK. He did a year in TK, and it was a year of maturity and growth for him that was an incredible gift. I always think that those parents gave their child the gift of time, just a little bit more time to mature and be able to do the things that would be required of him once he did matriculate into kindergarten. And he was able to mature spiritually, his character matured, his academics matured. And then when he was a year older, and then again coming into kindergarten, he absolutely came in completely ready and prepared. And his mom, you know, as I said, he's now a ninth grader. His mom, on a regular basis through the years, has told me how thankful she was that I made that recommendation. In fact, I saw her just this summer. Her son's about to be in high school, and she said, I don't know if we would be here today if you hadn't seen that he needed one more year of just maturing a little bit more. And it's made all the difference for him.
Well, and I think you touched on this, and we said this earlier, but sometimes it's so easy, because this is in a school environment, it's so easy to look at a singular focus. And I think for even us as parents to look at a singular focus to go, oh, this is where they are academically. But so many other factors, so many other pieces to the puzzle of maturation and everything else that you're talking about for a child that maybe can't even always be measured, but it can be observed and it can be seen and it can be known and understood to just say, you know what, sometimes, as you said, the gift of time is one of the greatest gifts as parents that we can give.
And it's interesting, in all our years that we've been doing this, there's never been a conversation with a parent where they've regretted that specific decision or giving their child more time and having them come a little bit later, leaving us closer, well into 18, that type of thing, heading off. But I have had conversations with parents that will have a little bit of regret related to, I wish we would have waited.
And I can think of a list of names too, where we made a recommendation for one more year, that the recommendation to give them a little more time in maturing process, and the parents, because of their own reasons, decided not to do that. And then we don't automatically see the results necessarily that kindergarten year or even first grade, but usually by second or third grade, we absolutely do. And I've wondered what difference it would have made if they had just taken the recommendation.
I think for all three of you, because as moms, you've all walked through this, and you've walked through this with many parents. But if you could boil it down even to a few words or a sentence, what words of encouragement might you have for parents as they stand at this threshold of entering into school life? Because again, that can be an overwhelming or a daunting threshold, and then factor in the financial, all of those pieces, right? It can just feel so heavy and so big. What words of encouragement would you have for them at this point?
I think what I would say is, if anything that we said today or on your journey resonates with you, and you're getting that inkling of like, I think that this is what I want for my child, I think that that's where you start, is what do I want my child to look like at 18? What kind of person do I want them to be? And then look for the educational setting that is going to partner with you on that. And instead, I think sometimes what parents do is they say, well, this is our pot of money and our pot of resources, and so we have to fit something into that. And so I would just challenge you to, flip it and say, no, what do I want for my child? And then come talk to us about what that looks like financially or what that looks like educationally, and we can have that conversation. But trust that you are being prompted by something, because you are the expert on your child. And if you are being prompted and your heart is leading you towards a Trinity education, and the Lord is, in your prayer time, that's being affirmed, like, pursue it and come and talk to us, because we've helped literally, hundreds and hundreds of families make it happen for the long term.
The greater process of all of this, we need to trust the Lord and realize that He is going before us, and He is going to help you with the details that sometimes feel overwhelming, and then trust the discernment and the wisdom of counsel too, because God's word is full of advice for us, and there are people at our school that have walked this journey for years and come with expertise and experience that you might not have as the brand new mom of a 5-year-old, and we will always acknowledge that you know your child best, but it is always our goal to know them really well too, and to love them as much as you do. And remember that you are walking into an institution with years and years of experience in our staff and in our faculty.
And I would say breathe.
Yeah, good advice.
And rest in the process. It will be okay. All the pieces, and to trust there's a team that wants to partner with you and will partner with you in the highs and lows. It is a marathon, TK through 12th grade with children. It is a privilege and a blessing, but it is a marathon, and that there's, like you were saying, Sarah, community around, of course, the Lord, and, we do it together. Finally,
my last question in closing, I always love to maybe point parents in the right direction for some resources and other things that they can lean on, ways that they can feel informed and equipped when they're looking at all these things for their children, and they're, again, looking at starting school. So I would love if you guys could just share any resources that you could recommend, because I know in the world we live in now, there are a plethora of resources. It's honing in and finding the right ones, whatever that might be, books, podcasts, anything like that you can provide to parents.
I would definitely recommend that parents consider coming to one of our Discover Trinity events. So the best way to get to know us is to come to one of our open house Discover Trinity events, and you'll hear from Liz Caddow and her story more, which is fascinating. You'll be able to get a campus tour. And then we have an education expo where all of the principals and department directors are all there, so you can get your individual questions answered. And then often from there, parents want a little bit more individual attention, and then you can schedule a private tour with me, and I can bring you on campus and we can talk about the specifics of your family. But our Discover Trinity events, we'd love to see you guys there. That's a great place to start.
If you're just exploring classical education and you want to understand what we mean by this movement of classical education, there's a book by David Goodwin and Pete Hegseth called The Battle for the American Mind, which lays out the history of classical education, the way that our country has moved from a progressive approach to education and what we've lost in doing that. And then it also lays out what has happened as this movement has grown and how it's different from what your children would experience in public school right now. Another one that comes to mind is Tending the Heart of Virtue, which is another way of looking at story and how the moral imagination is developed through story and really helps to point kids towards virtue and character development. And it's really an excellent book.
I do love the battle for the American mind. Parts of it get a little political, but you can weed through that and find the meat of why classical education, in particular Christian classical education, bears such good fruit and is highly effective.
Well, thank you all for your time and just sharing your wisdom, your expertise, all of that with our listeners. I hope that this proves to be a great resource for them, again, as they enter into this time of school and trying to figure out how and where and what's best. And again, for all that we carry as parents, and in some ways rightfully so, the responsibility that the Lord has given us, but as they embark on this journey of school life. And I hope and pray that this is a great resource for you, whether that's the books that are recommended or whatever else was heard today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Different by Design. To learn more about Trinity Classical Academy, visit us at trinityclassicalacademy.com. And for more information about our approach to classical Christian education, be sure to check out the conversations over at the Classical Academy podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time.